And then I'll mute myself.
Okay, well, I hate to get started with just a couple of us, but I know how important your time is. So let's do this. My name is Michelle. I think I know most of you. I'm the attorney that reviews your contracts, and I'm here for any questions you might have. And we are going to go over the forms changes for 2020. As everybody knows, in August, MAR comes out with all of their forms updates every year. And so this year they came out with them, and there's actually not that many. This whole class probably will take about 10 minutes unless we have questions, which usually there are. But there really wasn't that many large substantive changes, but I'm going to hit the highlights, and I am going to attempt to share my screen, which for those not technologically savvy like myself, this is a big step, but I'm going to attempt it. So bear with me to see if I can share. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Okay, so here are the forms that we're going to go over. I'm going to close that little bar. Okay, and we are going to just start with, first of all of the forms changed, meaning they all added this date of this purchase agreement line. And please stop me or ask questions or anything if you want to, because I feel like I'm all alone talking to myself. It's very strange. So all of the forms added this date of this purchase agreement line here. And what that did is signify that anytime a reference on the documents to the date of the purchase agreement, instead of guessing between, are we talking about the final acceptance date? Are we talking about a different date? They're trying to clarify that when referencing the date of the purchase agreement, we are actually referencing line 1. The date that is put on line 1 is what is referenced in the date of the purchase agreement anytime it's mentioned, unless it specifically says final acceptance date, then you know to look at the final acceptance date. Otherwise, they're really looking at this number 1 date line here. So that was changed on every single document. They added this part that says date of this purchase agreement. So you will see that on every document, but that's the only thing that changed on a number of the documents. So then I'm going to, oops, sorry. I'm going to go to the CIC addendum. The CIC addendum is the next thing that had some changes, and bear with me as I scroll through because I know there's a better way, but I don't know how to do it, so we're just going to scroll. It's on page 9 here. The CIC addendum, here it is, and let me get rid of this. They changed just a few things on the CIC addendum. Besides date of this purchase agreement, which you'll see at the top, they also had a change to this addendum in line 70 through 74. And the only thing that they changed was they modified based on some statutory changes that now allow a buyer to complete their statutory cancellation to the seller via email. So you'll see that under subdivision 3 through electronic communication. So before, it was never put in the addendum that if somebody decided to cancel the purchase agreement based on that 10-day right of rescission, you had to hand deliver that written notice or mail it. And they just had never updated the form to allow it to be emailed or electronically communicated. So that was updated. So that's a really good one, because obviously that's how most of our communication is done nowadays. So that was just updated because the statute was updated. So then they were allowed to update the form. Any questions on that document? Okay, that's the only thing on that document. I'm telling you, there's just not that many substantive changes. We are going to go to the counteroffer. This one I thought was a great change that was made that will hopefully help people. I have my screen up so I can at least see a couple of faces, because otherwise I feel like I'm talking to myself. So that's why I see you here, but I'll close it so it doesn't bother the recording. So the next one we're going to talk about is the addendum to the purchase agreement, the counteroffer. This had a couple of substantive changes that I thought were really well done. They added that this counteroffer addendum is valid only upon signature and delivery of the purchase agreement. Now, I know most of you already knew that, but it's a great reminder that the counteroffer includes all of the terms in the purchase agreement. So you need that purchase agreement to actually have been signed and delivered, as well as this counteroffer, in order to have a valid purchase agreement. The other thing that changed, which I think is a great change, is at the bottom, lines 29 and 30, they added the final acceptance date to the counteroffer addendum. So you'll see when we talk about the purchase agreement later on that if you check the box that there is a counteroffer attached, you will also note that you don't have to put a final acceptance date on the regular purchase agreement anymore. If that box is checked, it states right there that the final acceptance date will now be found on that counteroffer. And here it is. This is where you would put that. So that is a great change, because I don't know how many times poor agents I've had to go back to and said, I'm sorry, you got to go back and put the final acceptance date on the purchase agreement. Even though you had counteroffers going back and forth, we still need that date. Well, now you have it in the correct spot, right on the counteroffer, and there should be no question about that. So that I thought was a great update. I was really happy to see that. Any questions on the counteroffer? And
that makes sense.
Doesn't that make sense? I love that one. Yeah, that was a great update. I thought, wow, it was about time that they did that. So, okay. The next one we're going to go to here, you'll see like the lead-based paint. Again, no substantive changes, just date of purchase agreement is highlighted. They changed the language there. That's all on that form. Same with buyer's contingency. So we are going to go all the way to representation agreements. The next substantive change that I want to talk about is on like the buyer reps and the facilitator document. They added a few things that I think are really helpful. So I am going to take you to the representation document, which is right here. Here we go. The buyer representation contract. And again, it's also, they added this also to like the facilitators and all the other representation documents, but we're just going to look at this one. They added this line, if you see under line 3, examples. So they are helping out with defining who the buyer is. And we get this question a lot. If you have individual buyers, it's easy. So the buyer is, and then you have the name, let's say the husband and the wife. But if you have an estate or a trust or a corporation, sometimes people are confused as to what do they put down as the buyer? Do they put their individual names, like the person signing it, or do you put the name of the trust? And this is trying to help you out. You actually put the name of the trust or the estate or the corporation in this line. On line 3, you are going to have either individual names if they're individual people buying, or you're going to have the name of the estate or the name of the trust or the name of the corporation. So it's a good reminder as to what would go in that line. Now remember, at the end, when somebody's signing, they sign their own name, and then after their name, they may put, you know, president, if that's their title of the corporation, or trustee, if they're the trustee. You always sign your own name, the signer, and put what your position is. But at the top on line 3, who is the client? Well, the client is actually that corporation or that trust. So that's what hopefully will add a little clarity so people understand a little bit more on those representation documents. So I thought that was a great find. And the other thing that they added was at the end, down here, consent for communication, they just added text messages, which I think is great that by signing this document, they're authorizing to be communicated not only by mail, telephone, fax, email, but also by text message. They just had never added that. Now we know that so many clients are texting back and forth with their agents, so that was a great addition as well. So they just updated that. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and it's not on this document, but if you were looking at the exclusive right to sell, the listing documents, they have now added marital status to the listing documents. So they removed marital status from the purchase agreement. I guess they assume that title companies will figure that out when it gets to doing the title, but they added it to the listing contract so that you can be prepared as soon as you list a property if it's a married couple or not. So I thought that was a pretty good addition too. So that's the only thing that was really added there was marital status on that representation document. Any questions before I move on? Okay. I told you, it's fast. Like there's just not that many. But I'm really impressed I was able to figure out how to get this on the screen. Took my husband a while to help me out here. Okay, so we are now going to go to the vacant land disclosure. It just happens to be one of the next ones that was talked about. Oh, actually, we're going to do the regular disclosure first. Sorry about that. I forgot that came first. So there was a couple of substantive things that happened on the property disclosure. So on the property disclosure here, they modified the appliances, the appliances, heating, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical section a little bit. So let's go down to 140. Here we go. They added the NA and they explained it a little more. Check NA if the item is not physically located on the property. Check yes for items that are in working condition and no for items not in working condition. So no more crossing out lines and those kind of things that were always so confusing. You know, they have the 3 boxes and they did a really good job of explaining what each box was for. So that was good. I thought they did a nice job with that. And hopefully we don't have all the questions on, well, is it there or is it just not working? The other thing and I skipped by it, was they explained what no means, which I thought was interesting. Oh, here we are. Instructions to a buyer. Here we go. If seller answers no to any of the questions listed below, it does not necessarily mean that it does not exist on the property, did not occur, does not apply. No may just mean that seller is unaware. So it does explain to people that, you know, a seller who puts no down on some of these may just not be aware of something. So I thought that was also interesting. Let's see, I think those were the only changes on that document. Any questions?
Question, Michelle. So
yeah.
On our incident that we look at, or that I have in ours, I don't see our radon pages anymore in there.
Oh,
so
I'm not aware that that was taken out for some.
Right. So like in the one, I think, and maybe Lauren, I don't know if Lauren's still on, but the ones that were loaded in there, none of, like, I'm looking at it and there's no radon page. So I've been having to add those and, you know, rescan them in.
Okay, maybe MAR may just not have attached it like they did the years before.
Yeah,
so,
before it used to be right on there, you know.
Right. So that's a great catch, so that maybe the market center is going to have to do it themselves because we weren't aware that MAR for some reason didn't do it. So.
Yep, so that is what happened. However, I swear I just checked yesterday and they were all of a sudden there attached. I'm not sure if it was only, it might only be attached to the disclosure alternative.
Oh.
Because that's when I was looking at yesterday and the radon pages were still there. But I haven't checked just the regular seller's disclosure yet. The standalone page of radon pages. So really all you have to do is upload those as well.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to rescan it, just upload them.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just saying you can just put that in as separately or whatever in another, because
Yeah.
obviously got the one bucket for sellers disclosures. Just put it somewhere else in there. Okay.
Yeah, there's empty spots. Yeah, you can always upload it in command. And
Okay. Fair enough.
that would work. So I apologize for that one. I'm not sure why Mar didn't make it easy for us, but they didn't. So what can I tell you? Okay, so that's the property disclosure. And then I'm gonna go to the vacant land disclosure. Let's see. There was just, oh, you know what? They didn't really mark a spot, but on the vacant land disclosure, what they did was they eliminated some language that stated that gardens and new tree plantings would be at least 30 feet from surrounding property lines, etc. They found that that just didn't make sense in a vacant land disclosure because it was vacant. So they really just kind of cleaned up the language and got rid of some language that didn't make sense in the vacant land disclosure. That was really the only change there. So I don't have a specific line to point to or anything like that. So that's the vacant land disclosure. And then we are going to go to the purchase agreement now. This has the most changes. And again, there's not that many, but there are some. So I'm going to take you, excuse me, scrolling, because it's all the way down here. Again, all of these documents they included, but it's the same change on all of them. So we're not going to talk about each one because I already mentioned it. But on the purchase agreement, we did have a couple of things, a couple of sections that they changed that I thought were pretty good, actually. They didn't do a lot of things. Oh, one thing I'll mention is the COVID addendum. They did make a decision not to include the COVID addendum on the back of the purchase agreement as one of those little check boxes because they're hoping it's not here forever. So you will notice they didn't add that as one of the little check boxes at the bottom of the purchase agreement where a lot of the other addendums are. So I just thought I'd mention that. They discussed it and they thought about it and they decided, no, you should still be using it if it's appropriate for as long as we need to, but they're hoping eventually that goes away and they didn't want to add it. So that's just a little side note. Okay, here's the purchase agreement. And again, there was a few things that they added, minor things, but here's the first kind of substantive one. On line 18, they did clarify for in-ground pet containment. So what we're talking about here are all the improvements or fixtures or things that are automatically included with the property. A invisible fence for a pet is included. You can't pull the wires out of the ground. That is included. However, the collars are excluded. So you would not believe how many times I've had to, mediate a fight over whether or not somebody was supposed to leave the collars or not. Well, this specifically says now that you do not have to leave the collars, that those can go with you. I guess maybe they can be recalibrated for your new system or something like that. But so that has been specifically excluded there. The other substantive change was they talked about mounted items. So things that are attached, again, are included, like TV wall mounts. And they did specifically say the ceiling speaker mounts. So there was always some discussion about, do we have to leave the ceiling speaker, just the mounts? This says ceiling speaker mounts. I guess that means the mounted part. And maybe if the speaker itself is not a part of that, then you can take that, but the mounts have to stay. That is included now. And the other big part, lines 25 through 27, are the home automation and integrated phone systems like a Nest doorbell or a thermostat that is integrated through your phone. You have to leave the doorbell or the thermostat. However, you do not have to leave your telephone, your mobile device that controls it. You just have to give people the passwords or permissions or access information so that they can change it to be a part of their mobile device. But you don't have to actually leave your telephone, because that's kind of silly, but you know, we got to spell everything out. So now it is spelled out that you don't have to leave your mobile device, but you do have to leave the actual doorbell or the actual thermostat, that sort of thing. Any questions on that? Pretty self-explanatory. Okay.
So this is Jeff. I've got one question. Do we tell our customers to disable their accounts or to hand passwords over? I've been telling them disable the accounts and let the new people set up their own.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's how it works, where if you disable it, then they can go in and just set up their own, that would probably be the easiest. However, if you haven't disabled it and you need to give them the password in order for them to access it, then that's what you'll have to do. But if you can just disable it and then they're able to use whatever information is on the doorbell to enable it, then they're fine. But they just can't be stuck with not able to do it themselves, you know. So you have to give them whatever permissions are necessary to do it. And yeah, that might mean just disabling yours so that they can go in and enable it, which is fine. One or the other, they just have to have access.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. No other questions on that. The next part of the purchase agreement we're going to talk about, they updated the mortgage financing a tiny bit. They just combined conventional or privately insured conventional on one line. So now you just check that box if whether it's privately insured or just regular conventional. So that's fine. Let's see. And then they added some language under the VA financing section, clarifying, here it is, line 144. They just, 143 and 144, they're just clarifying that that one-time funding fee is based on the loan amount. So people often are asked, well, how much am I going to be responsible if it's paid by the seller? You know, it's based on the loan amount and you'll have to get that amount from the lender. But they did add that language based on loan amount. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the risk of loss section. I'm telling you, there's just not that much. They changed. Oh, here's one that I didn't have, but I'll talk about. You're going to notice that in all the spots that they reference the purchase agreement, whether it's a previously written purchase agreement or to remove a buyer's proof of sale, that they added the term executed. So before it used to say pursuant to a fully written purchase agreement. So if it was contingent on the buyer selling, they would say it's pursuant to a fully written purchase agreement. They got rid of the word written and changed it to executed. All these spots, you're going to see that it now says executed instead of written, which is great because just because something was written, if it hadn't been delivered, it's not a true purchase agreement. So they just changed all of those references from written purchase agreement to executed purchase agreement. So you'll just see that word highlighted when you go through some of these. So that was good because that's necessary. Well, here it is again. You know, this section is about on line 252, previously executed purchase agreement, when often in multiple offer situations or different things like that, people are waiting to get back a cancellation from a previous purchase agreement that maybe they got out of because of an inspection or something. And so you'll see they changed it from previously written purchase agreement to previously executed. So it's there a few times on your purchase agreement. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that because I think that's an important one. Risk of loss, this section did add that term that I talked about at the very beginning of this presentation, date of this purchase agreement. So it used to be if there is any loss or damage to the property between the, and it didn't specifically say date of this purchase agreement and the date of closing, that's when you determine whether or not a seller is responsible. So they changed it to clarify that they are talking about the date at the top of the purchase agreement. So if there is any loss or damage to the property between this date, so the date it was written, and the date of closing, the purchase agreement is canceled, the buyer's option, and it goes on and on. By written notice to seller, assisting if buyer cancels this purchase agreement, buyer and seller shall immediately agree to sign a cancellation. So they did clarify for risk of loss that the date they're talking about is this one at the top, not final acceptance date. So hopefully that stops some arguments as to what date everybody is supposed to be looking at. The other thing on the purchase agreement that was changed, you'll see some numbers were changed. That's just to coincide with, because of some of the other little changes, the lines numbers actually changed, but nothing substantively changed. Here we are, lines 44 and 45, a fully executed purchase agreement and final acceptance. They're just clarifying that to be binding, this purchase agreement and all the addenda must be fully executed by both parties and a copy must be delivered. So they are just emphasizing what it means to be executed. It means it's not only got to be signed by everybody, it's also got to be delivered. So hopefully by having that clarifying language in there, there will be no issues as to if something was executed or not. Here you'll see that no, they did not add another checkbox for the COVID addendum. So if you use it, you may want to reference it somewhere. It's not necessary. You don't have to. We didn't ever used to have these checkboxes, so you don't have to add it, but there's nothing wrong with if you want to see attached, COVID addendum as well. And then line 493, 494 is where they talk about the counteroffer and the final acceptance date that we talked about before. That now when I see this box checked on 491, I'm not going to ask you, where's your final acceptance date down here at 506? Because I know that you're not going to have one there. You're going to have the final acceptance date noted on the counteroffer addendum. So if you check that box, just remember, I'm not going to bug you about that. You no longer have to come back to this document to put the final acceptance date. If you don't check that box and there's no counteroffer, obviously you have to put the final acceptance date on the purchase agreement. The other thing they took off where these red X's are is that marital status. Again, they took off marital status on the purchase agreement and it is now just on the listing contracts. And I think that is all on the purchase agreement that we have. I'll just mention this because there's so much confusion often on this little box at the bottom about arbitration. And I think they're trying to help clarify it a little bit by adding a few words. Reminder, this box is just asking the sellers and the buyers to sign if they have been given the documentation regarding arbitration. They are not signing if they want to do arbitration. All they are signing it to is saying that, yes, we have been given by our agents the documentation about arbitration. So we have been able to review that. Then you have the actual separate arbitration document where you would decide if you want to sign it and be a part of arbitration or if you want to decline it. So everybody should be signing lines 513 and 514. This is just letting us know that, yes, you saw it. The actual separate document about arbitration, not all will sign, only those that want to partake in it. So I think they were trying to clarify it a little bit by expressing that arbitration document is a voluntary agreement. It's a separate form from this purchase agreement. And by signing this, you're not agreeing to arbitration. Hopefully that will help. I don't know. That still always seems to be a point of contention. People just don't understand it, but whatever. That's all I have on that document. Any questions on the purchase agreement? No, okay. let's see. New construction purchase agreement, there's not a specific line that I have to talk about, but they did let us know that they felt they cleared up some language so that it is apparent that you use this new construction purchase agreement also for spec homes and to be built, or homes that are in the process already of being built. So that's good. So there are references in here where you're not just using it if, you know, there's a blank slab or plot of land and now you're trying, you know, you're building a new house. You could be just buying a brand new model that nobody's lived in and you could use the new construction purchase agreement if you'd like. So they clarified that. So that was good. Spec homes and in the process of being built homes. And they cleaned up the language, just like in the regular purchase agreement with, you know, privately and regular conventional. All of that is the same as what we've already talked about on there. So that was the only substantive changes on the new construction purchase agreement. We don't see this a lot because builders generally have their own purchase agreements that they want, but sometimes you run into a real small builder that uses just the MAR forms, and so that's when you would use it. And that's all I have on that. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the residential lease agreement. There was just a small change on the lease agreement, and then I'll point to that. And other than that, I mean, it's just, we got lucky this year. I think they realized all of us have enough going on. We didn't need a bunch of changes. So on the lease agreement, here it is. Let's see. They added an option down here. You'll see line 16 to 20. The term means the period of time starting on and ending on. That's always what it was when they were talking about the term of the lease. Maybe it's usually a year-long lease, so January to January of the next year. They added line 17 through 20 for month-to-month leases. So now, if you're helping somebody write a lease and they just want to do a month-to-month lease, it's on there. You just have to check the box and the starting month, and then it explains that it terminates, you know, at the end of each month and how a month-to-month works. So that was good. I don't know if a lot of people are using this. Again, generally, a lot of landlords have their own leases they like, but if you are helping somebody with a lease and using the MAR lease, now you can help them with a month-to-month. That's all I have, everybody. Are there any questions from anybody? I can't believe how quick this was. No questions. Okay, well, I'm always available if anybody needs me to give me a call or email me with any questions, and I'm happy to help. But otherwise, I think we are all set.
Thanks, Michelle.
Do we have a copy of this?
You know, I think I sent it to all of the admins in all of my market centers, but I'll make sure to send it out again. Do you have it, Lauren?
No, Meg sent it out. Meg or Nagy sent it out to everyone, but I will find it. I'll find it in the email somewhere and I can resend it to you, Jen.
I think it was, I think I saw the email, it was like a week ago, but it didn't have these nice highlighted portions. And I really like the nice highlighted portions to show specifically what was changed. So if you could send out this specific copy, that would be amazing. I would like that a lot.
Cool.
If you can
Thank you.
copy me in too, that'd be great too.
Yeah, I'll send it to, if I can't find this, I'll have Michelle send this to me, but then I'll send it to the entire market center.
Wonderful. Thank you, dear.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
welcome.
This is the only one I have. It comes right from MAR, so I'm thinking maybe the highlighted got somehow didn't show up when I sent it or something, but I can resend that to you guys and make sure, because I agree. I love the highlighted. Then you know what's actually changed on each document because there's so much language. It's hard to tell. So I agree. Well, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. It was good
Thank
to
you.
see some faces. All right. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.